Good morning. Welcome back to Encyclopedia.zone. My name is Don Jolly. I am a freelance writer living and working in New York City. My work is appeared in the Revealer magazine, Penthouse magazine, and if you want proof, here you go. Penthouse from a couple of years ago. Paper or plastic. Oh, geez, look at that fucking byline. Look at that fucking byline right there. Anyway, if anybody has the November 2015 issue of Penthouse magazine, check it out. Anyway, big eventful weekend. Got to get a start on the week. This is an essay entitled Be the Spectacle. On Saturday, there was a demonstration in Portland, Oregon. A bunch of Proud Boys, quote unquote, clashed with a bunch of anti-fascists, quote unquote, throughout the afternoon. Trump tweeted about it. There were 13 arrests and, according to CBS News, 6 injuries. 1 person required hospitalization. Weapons were seized by the police, mostly shields and sticks. This news has brought me into a wistful mood. Listen now, my children, to old Grandpa Theobald. That's a H.P. Lovecraft reference. Because I want to tell you about a protest I attended in the ancient year of 2003. Now, some of you might not remember this, but in 2001, the World Trade Center buildings in New York City fucking exploded. And our government's response was to blame the entire Arab world. Shortly thereafter, we invaded and began the occupation of Afghanistan. By 2003, however, there was a new target. The New York Times and CNN and Fox began repeating the Pentagon's case, and I was in high school. The best and most important thing in my life was that I was sitting behind a girl that looked like Blanche Sweet in English class. But even I could tell we were headed towards another war. In my experience, there are 2 things that really disrupt the American routine and pull us out en masse into the streets, those being Star Wars and real wars. I was the perfect age to protest. News of a walkout began to spread around the school. One of the girls on the student council, a junior achiever with more money than me, was organizing a demonstration for March 21st. All the cool kids were going to skip school that day and join a protest on the main drag of the University of Texas. Never mind that UT is one of the most affluent schools in the country because it is capitalized by the oil and gas industry. On this day, a mass of UT students were going to skip class along with my high school to register their disapproval with the warmongering government of their United States. This was going to be our chance to #resist. Austin is the capital of Texas, but its cultural life, especially for me and the students of my arts magnet high school, was driven by the university. My teachers knew they couldn't endorse the walkout outright, but most of them did so implicitly and with great ceremony. My American history teacher practically had tears in his eyes as he told the class, "You have to do what your conscience decides, but I will mark you absent." My best friend's mother or aunt, I can't remember, commented that the walkout was great. You could use all our old protest songs, she said, whoever she was. And she was a fucking boomer. They all were, all the adults. As the 21st, the day of the walkout approached, I started to see my classmates, who I knew affectionately as a pack of morons, larval consumers, fashionable fraud, and the occasional real-ass motherfucker. I saw them start to carry themselves with a sense of dignity and purpose, which I found bracing and alien. When the morning of the walkout arrived, most of them were carrying picket signs, and my particular peer group, going through an extended love affair with the Kinks, was dressed in full mod regalia, two-piece suits, and thin ties. I tore one of the public service posters off the hallway wall. The slogan was, "You drink, you drive, you walk," meaning you lose your license. I altered it for topicality so that it said, "You drink, you drive, you walk to Iraq." I found a piece of wood in the art room, stapled my sign to it, and walked out early, about 5 minutes into second period. As my friends and I approached the campus, we passed a phalanx of riot cops, and one of them complimented me on my protest sign. There's a hashtag attached to the left wing of the Portland protest that occurred last Saturday. Be the spectacle. Guy Debord, who wrote his Society of the Spectacle in 1967, posits that in a mass media society, the phantom events broadcast by this media are more real than the relatively limited material events that they are sculpted from. In application to politics, this theory is perhaps best epitomized by Abbie Hoffman and the Yippies. The American student movement and the peace movements of the 1960s fully embraced the strategy of maximum ridiculousness, maximum theatricality, on the theory that television cameras could never resist a good show. So the better footage demonstrations could provide, the farther into the world of mass media their political messages could penetrate. We have been living with this approach to public political demonstration in the United States for more than 50 years. In Portland on Saturday, a right-wing protester dressed like a Roman centurion waved a stick around at various leftists in a moment caught on camera phone. His bulletproof vest was decorated with the words, "I hate the left in," just in, no apostrophe, racism. I hate the left in racism. There was a refreshment table for the left-wing arm called Snack Block. There were people in inflatable unicorn costumes. A significant portion of the protest was dressed like bananas. They even had a banana brass band. People were also struck with hammers. Footage was captured of a man with his nose smashed, writhing on the street bleeding. Another clip shows a woman spitting on a cop car and then immediately being tackled by portly Portland stormtroopers. Donald Trump tweeted on Saturday that major consideration was being given to declaring Antifa, anti-fascist action, an organization of terror. Excuse me. This is what Joe Briggs, one of the Proud Boy organizers of the White Wing side of this spectacle, wanted. Go look at President Trump's Twitter, he said. He talked about Portland. Be the spectacle indeed. At the walkout in 2003, a very clear hierarchy of status asserted itself almost immediately. My friends and myself always made an effort to appear conspicuously cool. At first, we marched around the blocked-off sections of Guadalupe Street with the rest of our high school. Then we ended up in a teach-in circle where some ectomorph UT golem was reading slam poetry about the upcoming war. I only remember one line because it was repeated every 5 seconds. Making glass out of desert sand. Making glass out of desert sand. Making glass out of desert sand. One by one, I watched the clusters of my peers depart. Nothing is cool about slam poetry. We ended up with the anarchists marching towards the Congress Avenue Bridge, waving banners of black and red. We were at the head of the column, and we chanted along with the rest of the march. 1, 2, 3, 4, we don't want this fucking war. But there was a second verse that only the anarchists repeated. 5, 6, 7, 8, organize and crush the state. I screamed and I marched until I got tired. Then I walked 2 blocks away from the demonstration and caught the bus home. In Portland on Saturday, this general calm outside of the police-determined free speech area was also present. I saw a number of tweets to that effect. 1 block over, the banks were running, the restaurants were serving food, and the machinery of American corporatism was operating with its usual efficiency, spectacle or no. Some of my friends stayed at the protest after I left. Some of them were there when the demonstrators attempted to leave the area cordoned off for them by storming the Congress Avenue Bridge. They were beaten and they were tear-gassed, and one of my friends in his British invasion suit appeared in a photograph the next day on page 4 of the Austin American-Statesman. He was on the ground with a cop's black boot across his neck, wreathed in white plumes of tear gas. He was wearing an ascot. It looked like Kent State was happening to Davy Jones. That night, as I did most nights in those days, I shitposted on the Something Awful forums. A thread went up saying to check CNN, so I flipped on my 12-inch CRT color television and tuned the cable box to the news channel. That night I watched Baghdad explode while Wolf Blitzer moaned orgasmically about shock and awe, and analysts mooned over the quality of their night vision footage. A war started that day that has not ended since. A United States Marine was killed in Iraq on August 10th this year. The spectacle theory of protest is now something understood by all actors involved, the right, the left, the media. It's a competition to produce compelling footage. Someone getting smacked in the face with a hammer as an anecdote or a picture or a clip is information that will attract eyeballs, maybe even presidential ones. But whatever political message, right or left, these demonstrators think they are conveying is never attached to the media spectacle that they create. Joe Briggs, at least, was direct about his motivations. His purpose was to get the president to mention him by proxy on Twitter, and he succeeded. The baby boomers around me back in 2003, saw the demonstration as noble. They saw their demonstrations as noble. But they also saw their demonstrations on television. And while Hoffman and the Yippies had a grand old time shocking the establishment to grab airtime and column inches, by the end of the 20th century, everyone knew that a little cathartic street violence never hurt anyone except the people with the cracked skulls. If you make a play for television, you will play between commercials, and your antics, whatever their intended message, will be used to sell toothpaste and antidepressants. Operation Shock and Awe was a demonstration designed to capture mass media bandwidth too. CNN's crystal clear footage was itself a commercial for American bombs. So if you want to go out in the street and be the spectacle, then argue on Twitter for the next few weeks about which side committed which act of violence. Knock yourself out. Or better yet, knock someone else out because you might make the news.